Hi, I'm Deborah Vogler of Instant Insight Incorporated, reporting from SEMI ISS 2012 in Half Moon Bay, California. My guest is Bill McClean of IC Insights. Welcome again, Bill.
Thank you.
Well, my first question for you is this. You've said that the industry forecast for 2012 hinges on worldwide GDP. What does your analysis tell you about how the worldwide economy will unfold and impact the industry going forward?
Well, we're looking at 2012 worldwide GDP being a little bit better than 2011. And part of that is the U.S. economy recovering and doing pretty well. And at this point in time in the integrated circuit industry, inventories are pretty much even. And so what we think the market depends on growth in worldwide GDP, which we expect, again, to be probably better in the second half than in the first half of the year. I just read an article this morning about housing market getting better in the U.S. So we see a lot of positives. There was 200,000 jobs added at the end of in December of 2011 in the U.S. So there's a lot of positives we see going into 2012, which we think will help spur the integrated circuit market based on increased sales of electronic systems. You know, Intel announced the Ultrabook, and there's a lot of excitement around that. Again, that's probably a second half of 2012 story. So we're thinking, although the worldwide economy is not going to show great growth, it'll show enough growth to support our forecast, which is a 7% increase for the semiconductor market this year.
How is the end of stimulus spending and the move to austerity in Europe and the U.S. going to affect the industry?
Yeah, there's been, with the downturn in 2008 and 2009, there was $2.2 trillion in stimulus put in worldwide. And basically all of that stimulus money now has been spent. It's gone. And as we said, the big problem is not just the end of stimulus, it's the movement to austerity. So now we're cutting. And it's really worldwide. And we see a lot of governments cutting back and going to the austerity issue and cutbacks. And for the U.S., I think the unemployment issue is probably the key that starts overcoming the austerity. If you add more jobs and the housing market turns around, increasing jobs will help cover up the austerity plans. In Europe, it's much more touchy. Everybody expects Europe to go into a recession in the first half of this year, but again, recover in the second half. And a couple of things in Europe that look positive is because of the weakness there economically, the euro has come down in value, which is going to help their exports. And so there are some positives. And they also expect the ECB, the European Central Bank, to cut interest rates this year, maybe down to 0.5%, which will be an all-time low in Europe. So there are some things and policy moves that we expect to help, at least towards the second half, even in Europe, which, again, maybe in a recession the first half of this year.
What about an election year bump?
Yeah, in the U.S., well, we've seen historically that the semiconductor industry and the worldwide GDP actually does very well on average during U.S. presidential election years. We think this year, again, most forecasts for U.S. GDP are now around 2.4%. About 3 months ago, they were averaging about 2% for 2012. We think that's possible to move up to 3%, again, if we get addition of 200,000 or so jobs per month. The housing market does turn around. There are some policies that they're putting in place to help refinancing of homes at these record low interest rates. So we think there could be a small bump, but probably not a large rebound. The Congress is not working too well with each other, but there are probably enough things that can be done, and there's enough momentum in the market now that we should get some. This year will be better than last year, and I think that's a key.
Now, how is control for the NAND flash and SRAM markets versus control for the processor market shaping up? What can industry observers expect to see in 2012 and moving into 2013?
Well, what we see, in general in all the markets now is the technology is really a pressing issue now. We see a lot. It's really coming down to the have and have-nots in the technology. And you have Intel and Samsung really pushing forward on the finer feature sizes. And we see companies that are struggling to keep up, like Elpida, Promos, Nanya, some of the Taiwanese DRAM manufacturers really starting to fall behind. SMIC, the Chinese foundry, very difficult for them to keep up in technology. They don't really even have 65 nanometer technology, while TSMC and Global Foundries is already moving to 40 nanometer technology in production. And so we start to see this separation in the market, and we see the control being more and more in the hands of the big companies, whether it's flash or processors or DRAM, because of this technology movement. There's absolutely no slowdown from Samsung and Intel in pushing the leading edge feature sizes, and it's really getting more and more difficult for the second tier companies to keep up. I think we're going to see a real split over the next few years.
Thank you very much for being my guest.
Thank you.